Hello, and welcome to Initials Podcast Future Rich. I am your host, Barbara Ginty, and I am also a CFP, which is a certified financial planner. And today we are going to talk about Roth IRAs. So, the first few episodes of season 9 are going to focus on some explainer podcast on topics that we talk about with the guest in the first 3 months of season 9. So, we are going to talk about a fan favorite today, which is the Roth IRA. And if you haven't already, you can check out the explainer on the traditional IRA, which I will call the sister to the Roth IRA. And so the Roth IRA, your money goes in after tax. It will grow tax deferred, and then we'll talk about how it comes out. Ideally, you meet the requirements and it comes out tax free. So the Roth IRA has the same contribution limits as the traditional IRA. So for 2026, for those of you under age 50, you can contribute $7,500, and for those of you over age 50, you can contribute more because you have a catch up, and that allows you to do $8,600. In order to do this, once again, just like the traditional IRA, you are going to need to have earned income, which means W-2 income in most instances, or self-employment income. And you need to have earned at least the amount that you're contributing, right? So if you've only earned $6,000, then you can only put $6,000 in your Roth IRA. In addition to having had earned enough to support the contribution, you also need to make sure that your income, specifically your modified adjusted gross income, which is abbreviated MAGI, when you see that, you need to make sure that your income is below certain thresholds in order to be eligible to do the Roth IRA. And so as a single person, you begin to phase out, meaning you cannot make a full contribution starting at $153,000 in income. And by the time you reach $168,000 in income, you are no longer eligible to do a Roth IRA. Now, for married filing joint, your phase out is going to begin at $242,000 of income, and you're going to be completely phased out, meaning you are no longer eligible to do anything into a Roth IRA at $252,000. Now, if you go back and listen to our explainer pod on the traditional IRA, this is the exact same modified adjusted gross income threshold for the active participant rules regarding traditional IRA. So you will notice when you start looking at these thresholds for eligibility for a Roth IRA, you will see that overlap when considering a traditional IRA when looking at the active participant rules. Additionally, if you're thinking, well, my spouse makes more money, so I will file separately to keep my income separate. And that is a strategy that's often used specifically for student loans. So you'll hear me talk about that on the podcast, that couples will do married filing separate in order to keep their student loan payment or to be eligible for the public service loan forgiveness and have that income separated. So you might be thinking, oh, well, maybe that's a trick here for the Roth IRA because my spouse makes much more money. I was always eligible before we got married based on my own income. So I will do married filing separate. Think again, because they figured that one out. So the income threshold for married filing separate starts at $0, modified adjusted gross income, so it's zero, and completely phases you out of the Roth at $10,000. So the married filing separate strategy, which is used in other scenarios to separate out income, does not work when it comes to a Roth IRA. So in order to be eligible for a Roth IRA, you need to have enough earned income to support the contribution you're making and also be below the modified adjusted gross income thresholds so that you are allowed to be eligible. Now, if you are a spouse without any earned income, you are eligible to do a spousal Roth IRA, but once again, that does not waive those income limitations. So as a married filing joint individual, you need to be, for the full contribution, you need to be below $242,000. So I really thought this through. So the way the Roth works is the money goes in after tax. So you get no tax deduction in the beginning. So the money goes in after tax, and then it will grow tax deferred. And then you need to meet the following requirements in order for the money to come out completely tax-free. So the account needs to be open from January 1st of the first contribution year for 5 years. It's an important one. And you also need to meet one of the other qualifying factors, which is going to be age 59 and a half or older, permanent disability, first-time home buyer of up to $10,000 lifetime, or death of account owner. So if the account owner dies and you inherit this, they waive that 59.5 penalty in the 5-year holding. But the main ones are you want to have had the account, the Roth IRA, open for 5 years. And you want to be older than 59.5. And then everything comes out of the Roth account completely tax-free. Now, what you're saying to me is, but it was my money when it went in, and that is true. So if you want to take money before meeting these requirements, your contributions, what you originally put into the account, they come back to you completely tax-free because, as we said, you've already paid tax on that, so you don't pay again. Now, the earnings, so if you put in 10,000, it grew to 20, and so you have 10,000 of earnings, those dollars will have a penalty of 10% and taxes, right? Because you're below 59.5. So in order for both the contribution, which has always been tax-free, you can always get access to that contribution amount. But for the entire account to be tax-free, meaning the earnings on that account, you want to make sure that you're holding the account for 5 years and that you're older than 59.5. So what is very interesting about this account, the Roth IRA, is unlike the traditional IRA, there are going to be no required minimum distributions. So when we talk about the traditional IRA at 75, if you're born anytime later than 1960, you have to start taking distributions. That is not true for the Roth IRA. And another really big difference, and this is important when you get into retirement, is qualified Roth IRA distributions do not count towards any income when considering IRMA or Social Security taxation. So IRMA is the Medicare adjustment, meaning that if it's IRMA is abbreviated income related monthly adjustment amount. And so essentially what happens is based on your income, they will increase your Medicare premiums. And it's a 2-year look back, so it's a 2-year lag. And also when they calculate how your Social Security will be taxed, um, neither adjustment, the IRMA or your Social Security taxation, will they look at the Roth IRA because it does not increase your modified adjusted gross income and is not used, therefore, for IRMA or for the Social Security taxation. And this is a fun fact, it is the only vehicle that does not cause Social Security taxation. So I think that's a fascinating part about the Roth IRA, that you don't have to worry about Social Security taxation. Everything counts usually towards your Social Security taxation, including tax-free municipal bonds and tax-free bond funds. The Roth IRA is one of these few vehicles that does not cause taxation of Social Security benefits. Now, for both the traditional IRA and the Roth IRA, you have until the tax filing deadline of the following year. So, for instance, we're in 2026, so you have until 2027 to make a contribution, and the tax deadline is generally speaking, it's typically April 15th. So the nice thing about both the traditional IRA and the Roth IRA is you don't have to do it in the calendar year. You have up until your tax filing deadline of April 15th. We'll just say that's the typical date to fund either if you qualify for a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. So I hope that helps. And then for those of you who maybe do not meet the requirement for the Roth based on the income thresholds, that does not preclude you from participating in your workplace plan if they offer a Roth option within, let's say, the 401k. You do not fall underneath any of these income thresholds. This is only if you want to do a Roth IRA, which is a Roth individual retirement account. Do these rules apply? So I hope this was helpful. And if you like our podcast and you listen to our show, the best thing you can do to help us is to share it with a friend and rate and review us, which you can do both on Spotify and on Apple. Time for our disclaimer. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance references are historical and do not guarantee future results. Make sure that you consult with your own legal, tax, and/or financial advisor before making any decisions.